All right. Good morning again, everyone. And thank you so much again for joining us. We are really excited for our webinar today, where we will be showcasing tips and tricks that will help you transform your business with AI. And AI is clearly a hot topic, evidenced by the huge turnout we have today. And at Citrin Cooperman, we are no strangers to the concept of business transformation. Our team here are experts in empowering mid-market organizations like yours with the most relevant technologies, including ERP and CRM. We really believe this full scope gives us the right perspective and understanding to help you excel in leveraging modern technologies like AI. And with that being said, I am honored to present to you our panelists for today, Josh King, Director of our Microsoft Digital Services Practice, and Derek Nakamo, Partner of our Microsoft Digital Services Practice here at Citrin Cooperman, and our internal AI enthusiasts. Derek, please take us away.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Maria. That was awesome. So let me kick it off by just diving into today's agenda, what we're going to be discussing. So we're going to start with the journey, right? And I call it the journey, which is we're at this moment where we have all of this GPT technology available to us. But a year ago, right, I don't think any of us were even talking about GPT. So I'm going to go through how we got here from, wow, we have this new tool called ChatGPT, to what are all of these cool Copilot AI assistants that we have available to us. Then I'm going to go through our toolbox, right? So what are the tools that we have available to us today, and in what capacity can we interact with them to extract value for our enterprise? Then we're going to go through a couple of real world use cases that really highlight the way that GPT technology is bringing value to the enterprise. And finally, we'll go through Microsoft's newest suite of AI GPT assistants, Microsoft Copilot, and then we'll conclude with where do we go from here? So we've come so far in 1 year, what's next, and how do we get our journey started? So the journey. So I call it the ChatGPT moment. So I think over the last 20 or 25 years, there have been two pieces of technology that I remember the first time that I used it, right? And the first one was Google, right? So I had used Yahoo and other search engines, and then I used Google, and I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is giving me exactly what I need. I knew it immediately it was going to change the world. And the second time that happened was about a year ago, when I used ChatGPT, and I had this jaw-dropping moment that immediately I recognized that this technology was going to change the world. So then what happens next after the recognition? I think we all went through that moment. How do we harness this? So I think we all were scrambling to figure out, how do we make this work for the enterprise? We saw that there was something there. We knew there was value, but we couldn't really wrap our heads around, how do we make this work? So we all started to race to figure out how we can utilize this cool tool for more than just writing songs and poems and being funny. And then the journey, speed. So a year ago, we all started to interact with ChatGPT. Fast forward 1 year, right? We now have an entire suite of enterprise applications that is harnessing this data inside of our own data realm. So it's not external, it's our data. And I think the speed and rate at which this market is maturing is faster than any of us could have anticipated. So the toolbox, right? I call it a spectrum of choice, a unified platform, and I'm going to refer to it in 3 different flavors. So the disconnected GPT experience. It's where we all started. We saw the value. It's a tool that can do a tremendous amount of powerful things, but obviously it's disconnected from our data, right? And I think that was the biggest gap that we all saw when we saw ChatGPT and went into that next phase. But now the market's maturing, and we do have these pre-built AI tools built on top of the large language models that we all saw with ChatGPT in the form of Microsoft Copilot, right? So we don't need to build it, right? These are very specific functional use cases, and they do what they do, and they do it well, but they have very specific purposes. Then comes, I think, the most exciting part, which is the extend, right? So how do I take these tools, this incredible technology, and then really build on top of it? customize it, right? And this extend comes in the form of a handful of flavors, but the three biggest tools I'm going to focus on are Microsoft Copilot Studio, Azure OpenAI, and the Microsoft Power Platform. So now I'm going to dive into the first of our use cases. So this is the use case that really actually inspired this entire webinar, right? So it was our aha moment for, okay, we found a great use case. So I'm calling it intelligent parsing. So we had a problem, right? We had a customer with 30,000 class codes, and they were looking to build a Power BI report that allowed them to look at this class code and isolate the data elements that existed within it. So the class code could have a date, a location, a performance artist, but there was no rhyme or reason in terms of how it was organized, what the date format was, and we needed to separate these into distinct reportable attributes. So we start with Excel, we hit a wall. We go to ChatGPT, we see that it can do the job, but the problem is we have 30,000 rows of data, right? We needed a scalable way to do this, right? So in comes our solution. So we use OpenAI, API, Power Automate, some prompt engineering, which we'll cover in the next slide, and Power BI to deliver a solution for this. So it's going to bring me to prompt engineering, right? So how do we make GPT technology work for us? And I know that Josh is going to touch on this in more detail a little bit later, but I think there's this notion that GPT can read our minds and it can't, right? So when we have a request, a requirement, we need to be specific. We need to tell it exactly what our expectation is. So we're going to feed you this. We want you to do that. And here's how we want you to return this data to us. So things like giving examples, right? In this example, I actually give an example. Here's what the data might look like. Here's what the result should be, right? And set expectations for the GPT in terms of how you want to use the feedback that they're giving you. But you take all of this and this real world example, we went through a handful of iterations, right? Fine tuning our model, how we prompted, but we got to a point where we were able to take what you're seeing in the blue, right, and run this through our OpenAI API endpoint using Power Automate, and it took all 30,000 rows, and it wasn't perfect, but it was about 95% of the way perfect. And it took the location data, it took the date, and it took the artist, separated them, and like that, we had a solution where we could now report against these attributes in a meaningful way. We could have never accomplished this without either hundreds of hours of work manually toiling through this data, or have a great new technology like OpenAI. So the second use case that I want to dive into is intelligent recap. So this is diving into that pre-built model, right? So the use case one was more of the mature tools didn't exist yet. Intelligent recap, it's not no hyperbole here. This tool has changed the way that I do my work, right? How I conduct my business. So the pre-intelligent recap, if I was in a meeting, right, I had to balance making eye contact, paying attention, staying engaged, while also keeping notes, making sure I was clear on what the next actions were, who said what, when they said it. And with intelligent recap, it really just liberated me from doing all that, right? I let Microsoft Teams record the meeting. It will give me a transcript. It will take the transcript and it will take that transcript and then put it through the GPT engine of Copilot. And it not only gives me a summary at a high level, it gives me a detailed point by point breakdown of each high level summarized detail. It tells me all of my action items, right? It gives me a list of all of the speakers, when they were speaking, what they spoke about. It even breaks it up into logical chapters. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, but this is a tool. Again, it did not exist a year ago. It has completely revolutionized the way that I work on a daily basis. And I think this really kicks off that Copilot moment, right? And this is where I'm going to hand it off to Josh, where we now have this entirely new set of tools, right, that are pre-built and functional, right, within our data realm. So, Josh, I'm really excited to hand this off to you so you can take the audience through the Copilot journey.
Love it. Yeah, thanks, Derek. Yeah, so Derek kind of highlighted that a little bit there. So Microsoft has really invested a large sum of resources, money in taking what they've got from ChatGPT and putting it into the Copilot, the ecosphere of Copilot. Obviously, there's multiple facets to it, but highlighting some of those things within the suite of tools: Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Teams, the M365 chat, those pieces all work, in congruence with each other. But you have to kind of think of it differently from the way that we were working with Google. So I know I'm a expert Google. I know Derek is too, and I'm sure a lot of you are on the call are as well. But it's that mental shift in how we use Copilot, how we get information out of the tool. You do have to go more specific. You can't be as generic of saying, "Hey, Google, show me, the restaurants within 15 miles of me." You really have to drill down into what the goal is of what you're trying to get, but then also the context in which you're looking to get after. So if you're asking for specific sales numbers from a specific region within a spreadsheet, you really want to highlight those things in your prompting. And it really comes back and leads us down the path of some trial and error in understanding how the promptings work, and then getting to what you really need from the tool itself. So we're working with a large clothing manufacturer currently, and a couple of their use cases. Their first use case is for their sales team and their marketing team. Is they're creating these large sales presentations between 75 and 100 slides at times. So as you can imagine, creating those manually is an effort, even if you're working off of a template, calling all of the information, grabbing the images, making your slides and bullet points to be effective and get the message across that you're trying to get across. So what we've helped them in getting their users and trained up on is using the prompts in Copilot to go and grab images, go out and analyze the information from either a website or a Word doc, and give them that information they need to go and then build these dynamic decks for their sales team. It gets you. It's not going to get you 100% of the way there. We know that Derek kind of mentioned earlier that Copilot isn't going to do your thinking for you, so it's going to get you 75 to 80% there. But if you think of the time savings that you get out of that, of going and searching for all of that information, then you actually get to do the cool stuff of saying, this data is here, this is how I want to present it, and get my point across from that standpoint. So on the PowerPoint side, they're really leveraging this to create dynamic presentations. Their other use case that they're using is with Excel. They're using a lot of large data sets within Excel for asset tracking, distribution center inventories. So what we're working on is building out prompting that really speaks to that information and how to analyze that information so that they can make inventory allocation, distribution center allocation decisions more readily with that data, rather than having to cull through lines and lines and lines of information to source that data up so that they can say, okay, we need more of this SKU line into this distribution center. So it really is setting them up for success with their data and being able to leverage those things within their Excel ecosystem to make decisions at a faster rate. Teams chat is that next component, that M365 chat piece, which really is kind of the umbrella in my mind of being able to reach out to multiple different platforms. So as you can see up on the screen, we've got share meeting notes. So you can go into meetings that you attended. You can get information specifically about if I was mentioned, if I have any action items. It goes from that Teams recap that Derek mentioned earlier to really highlighting and being able to pull in information from a SharePoint site, or a Visio diagram, or a PowerPoint slide deck that somebody shared with you along the way, to really question and build out either an email or a response to a Teams message, things of that nature. So they've really encompassed a lot of different pieces in order for us to work more efficiently and leverage that AI in the best way. So functions for Copilots. Obviously, we've covered a ton so far, and the sales piece, Copilot for Sales hooks directly into Dynamics CRM, which allows you to get that information from your CRM information. Power Platform, Microsoft has put in some great tools within the Power Platform suite to be able to build workflows more quickly and more efficiently, as well as apps itself. Obviously, there's things that you still need to get your hands dirty on and get in there and do a little bit of the lifting. But the heavy lifting is done really a lot by the AI, and allows us to use and think critically in order to make these decisions. Copilot Studio is a very, very dynamic solution that allows us to interact with third-party solutions, as well as get those prompts for the day-to-day work life, where you're not necessarily inside of a tool, but you're leveraging Copilot Studio to be able to access data and move things along within your environment.
Awesome, Josh. So just where do we go from here? So what is the next step that we can offer everyone on this meeting to begin their journey in Copilot?
Helps if I come off a mute there.
It's helping there.
So with those workshop goals, so what we do in our workshop is we really look at your technical readiness, what your organizational needs are within your environment, and then really highlight some of those things, like what is possible with Copilot, what can we do to make your teams more efficient, whether it's on the sales and ordering side, whether it's on the marketing side, whether it's in accounting. All of these tools really fit a multitude of user groups within an organization to make them more efficient. So with those workshops, as we come out of that with a plan of looking at your technical readiness to make sure your environment is set up for success, not only from a licensing standpoint, but also a security standpoint, to make sure that all of the data is secure, that you're going to be leveraging within Copilot. But then that art of the possible piece is really highlighting what can it do for you, and spending time understanding what your organization does on a day-to-day basis. And if at the end of the workshop it is, hey, we're solid, great, thank you, we're more than happy to be your consultant moving forward. But then if there's additional work, training, rollout with your teams, that's where our team also steps in and builds out those communication pieces, and those training environments to be able to have you leverage those and get your people using the tools. Because one thing that we see a lot in the market is people just go and then their users get frustrated, and to me, that's not going to leverage the technology for people's growth moving forward. We really want to encompass that training and that rollout so that they can use those tools effectively and not get frustrated with those things from a prompting perspective as well.
Cool. And just maybe you could dive in a little bit on what that engagement model looks like in terms
For
of
sure.
Yeah.
So our starting piece is just under $3,000 at $2,999. And what that covers is we've got our discovery and readiness assessment. This is that technical readiness of where we look at your environment. We use Microsoft's tooling and prompts to determine where we're lacking, either on the security side, whether on the licensing side, and it gives us a really dynamic scorecard of what we need to do to get you ready for Copilot release. Then that art of the possible is really walking through everything that Copilot can do, from a Word, PowerPoint, Excel, M365 chat, Teams, all of those pieces, so that you understand, wow, there's a ton of things that we can leverage within the organization. And then building that plan is going through and building out that first plan of release for the organization, whether it's a smaller pilot group in accounting that we're rolling out to, and they're going to go and use Excel to track items. But in those deliverable pieces, we'll have that Copilot recommendations and report from that technical readiness. We're going to prioritize what we feel you need to do before releasing things, and then a budgetary scope and estimate of what that looks like after the workshop, and then meeting with our professionals like myself and Derek and our boss Zach, who's also on the Copilot train as well. So I think those pieces really gets us to that point where you guys are ready to leverage Copilot.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, so I think at this point, Maria, I'll kick it off back to you, and you can talk through how everyone who's logged in and shared their time with us today can take that next step, and maybe you can moderate some Q&A.
Perfect. Yes, we did have a question in the chat that Andrew and our team happily just answered. So there was a question from Carrie.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, was the intelligent recap done out of the box, or did you create the tool through configuration? So Andrew confirmed that it is out of the box, given that you have the right licensing, Microsoft licensing. So thank you, Carrie, for that question. Any other questions that that come to mind, please feel free to put them in the chat or reach out directly to myself or Derek, and we will make sure that we answer your questions as soon as we see them. We see them come through. Other than that, thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. And really appreciate Josh and Derek for this very, very thorough intro on how to transform your business with AI. So please do not hesitate and scan this QR code on the bottom left of your screen. And so that way you can schedule your and save your spot on our workshop. And spots are limited, so please do not hesitate to reach out, and we'll make sure that as soon as you reach out, we get you scheduled. And we look forward to doing another one of these very, very soon. So thank you so much again, Josh and Derek. For anybody that was not able to stay for the entire event today, we will be sending a recording of this entire presentation to watch on demand and to share with your friends and colleagues. And of course, in that same email, you'll be receiving a copy of the slide deck as well. So we look forward to hearing from you and excited to have another one of these soon. Thank you again, Josh and Derek, and everyone. Have a great rest of your morning.
Yes, and of course, and of course, the intelligent recap will be provided with that.
Oh yeah,
with that recording.
Amen.
Amen.
Amazing.
For sure. And actually, it does look like there's a question from Raj.
There is another
regarding
question.
that first use case, Derek, on the timeline.
Sure.
Discovery implementation.
Sure. Maria, do you have visibility to that question?
So regarding the first, a question from Raj regarding the first use case, what was the timeline from discovery to implementation?
So that was an internal project, right? So this was really our research phase internally. Honestly, it was a couple of days, right? Once we stitched the pieces together, right? We had the OpenAI endpoint set up on Azure, right? That was probably the biggest lift, right? From there, it just became a function of Power Automate made it really simple to interact with that endpoint. It was really a function of prompt refinement, right? So determining what the best way to ask and phrase my question to ensure that the output that I got was what I expected. So I think that probably took the biggest amount of time, the most amount of time, right? And this is really you becoming a data scientist, except in a low code capacity. So I would take samples of, say, 200 to 300 rows of data, run them through Power Automate, see what my result is, and see where things were going wrong, right? So, I noticed initially that it was giving me like a description of what it was doing before giving me the code that I was asking for, and I had to tell it, do not give me any pleasantries, do not tell me anything other than, and it but it worked. It got there, and it excuse me, helped to give an example, right? I think that I did call out at a certain point, like, here are some different ways that dates might be formatted. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it really was like a quick time to value. And we were, I don't want to say stumbling through it, but this was just like, we weren't necessarily asked to do that, right? Well, this is a Power BI engagement and the client comes to us with a problem, right? And it wasn't the scope of the project, but we're like, okay, cool. We're your Power BI partner. We want to help you get this data into a format that makes sense. So we just put our curiosity hat on, right? That I say it all the time, we're, nerds at heart in the best way. So we rolled up our sleeves and said, all right, what are our options? And that's where we went to Excel and said, oh, okay, we're not really solving it here. We're not solving it through ChatGPT. And that's when me and a colleague of mine, walked through, let's test this OpenAI endpoint and Power Automate. Great. A few hours later, it's set up. A few hours later, we're getting some results. And then 2 days later, we have what you saw. So, and again, this is the first go around, right? So now we have that whole rhythm, right? That was such a learning experience for us. The prompting, right? It's such a perfect example. So, yeah, that's what it took. Hope that answered your question. And if you have any more questions, happy to dive into it in more detail offline.
Thank you, Derek. It looks like Raj actually would like to connect one-on-one. So Raj, I'll reach out to you directly to set up a time that works for you. So
Perfect.
Thank you so much for that question. That prompted some really good conversation. And thank you, Derek, for that great explanation. Fantastic. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat just yet. Again, do not hesitate to reach out directly with any questions you have, that whether it's now or later in the day or this week. But we look forward to seeing you again, another one of these sessions very soon. Thank you again, everybody, for your time, and have a great rest of your day.